Do you know that feeling when you get a lab report back and you're just staring at this wall of numbers, trying to figure out what it all means? Well, today we are going to demystify one of the most important and, honestly, most confusing parts of that report, the reference interval.
Oh yeah, you open up your results, you're scanning down the page, and then you see it. A number in bold, maybe with a little asterisk next to it, flagged as high or low. And your heart kind of skips a beat, right? That little wave of anxiety is totally normal. But what does that flag actually mean?
So that one little number can feel like this huge, scary verdict. But here's the thing. Without context, it's just data. So let's build that context together and figure out how to make sense of your lab report, starting with the very words it uses.
Now, you've probably heard the term normal range thrown around a lot, but labs and doctors are actually moving away from it. Why? Well, think about it. If your result is outside the normal range, it kind of implies you're abnormal, and that can cause a lot of unnecessary stress. So the more accurate scientific term is reference interval. And trust me, this isn't just about semantics. Changing how we think about this is key to understanding your results without freaking out.
All right, so if a reference interval isn't some strict healthy versus unhealthy line in the sand, then what on earth is it? Let's decode how labs actually come up with these numbers in the first place.
Think of it this way. A reference interval is basically just a statistical snapshot. Scientists take a huge group of people who are considered healthy, test them, and then create a range from a low number to a high number that covers most of those people. It's not a personal guarantee of your health, it's just a way to see how your numbers compare to a large group of healthy folks.
Now, you might be thinking they just pulled these numbers out of a hat, but nope, there's a super rigorous, standardized process for creating these intervals, and it's all designed to make them as reliable as possible.
In fact, there are global watchdogs for this stuff, like the Clinical and Laboratory Standards Institute, or CLSI. They create these super detailed guidelines to make sure that labs all over the world are following a consistent and scientifically solid method. So how do they do it? Well, it pretty much boils down to 4 main steps. First, they define a very specific group of people, like, say, men between the ages of 30 and 50. Second, they have to go out and test at least 120 healthy people from that exact group. Third, they crunch all the numbers. And fourth, and this is the most important part, they take the middle 95% of all those results. That becomes the reference interval.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Because they take that middle 95%. What does that mean? It means by its very definition that 5% of totally, completely healthy people will have a result that falls outside the range. That's 1 in every 20 healthy individuals who will get a flagged result just because of natural human variation.
But wait, it gets even more complicated than that little 5% statistical quirk. That's just one piece of the puzzle. There are a bunch of other really important reasons your result might get flagged. And here's a perfect example of why these ranges are so not one-size-fits-all. Just look at this table for creatinine, which is a test for kidney function. The expected range for a young guy is totally different from the range for an older woman. Why? Well, things like age, sex, and even muscle mass can have a big impact. It just goes to show that your result is always being compared to a very, very specific group of people. This is probably one of the most important takeaways from this whole thing. You absolutely must use the reference range that is printed on your lab report. Don't just Google it. Different labs use different machines and different methods, and that can cause slight variations. The only range that matters is the one from the lab that actually ran your test.
Okay, so we've established there's a 1 in 20 chance that a single test on a healthy person might get flagged. But let's be real. When was the last time you only got one test done? What happens when you get that big comprehensive panel with, 20 different tests all at once?
Well, the chance of a false alarm just skyrockets. With 10 tests, there's a 40% chance that at least one of your results will be flagged just by pure chance. And if you get 20 tests done, that probability jumps to a whopping 64%. That means you're actually more likely than not to have at least one flagged result, even if you're perfectly healthy. That single fact should completely change how you look at a lone flagged result on a big report.
Okay, so after all that, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed. But don't be, because now we get to the good part. How do we use all this knowledge to be smarter and way less stressed when we look at our lab reports? How do we turn this scary data into a meaningful conversation? Let's put together a little game plan for the next time you get a lab report. Rule number 1, don't panic over one flagged result. Seriously. 2, look at your trends. Is this a new thing, or has this number been creeping up over time? 3, only compare your number to the range from that specific lab. 4. Think about the context. Is it just barely outside the range or way off? And how do you actually feel? And number 5, the most important rule of all, always, always, always talk about it with your doctor. They're the ones who can put all the pieces together.
So let's just bust this huge myth once and for all. An abnormal test result is not a diagnosis. It doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. The truth is, a result outside the reference range is a signal. It's a starting point. It's an invitation for your doctor to ask more questions and figure out what's really going on. It's the beginning of a conversation, not the end.
And really, that's what it all comes down to, doesn't it? Maybe the goal isn't just to be normal, to fit perfectly inside some statistical box. Maybe the real goal is to use this information to better understand your own body and your own unique health journey year after year.